welcome to another college essay webinar with the Rutgers Edge. I'm Karen. I'm the owner and founder of the Rutgers Edge, and I'm joined here tonight by Kate Forman, who is our super duper college essay specialist. So I'm really excited to have her here to help us kind of work through supplemental essays. Our last webinar, if you didn't see it, it is available online where we kind of talk through the personal statement. And obviously we're talking about the common application, which is generally the one that is used for the majority of colleges here in the US. So we're gonna, talk through those and specifically through the supplemental essays and questions. I don't even want to, there's so much to talk about. I'm not even gonna go through a big long laundry list of our backgrounds. If you want to look it up, we'll send that out. It's on our bio page. But one of the first things, Kate, what I was gonna do is just kind of hop into where to find these questions and essays first, because that tends to be a big question. And then we're going to go into actual essay questions and how we would approach it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to share my screen. So what you're seeing right now is my practice account here on the common application. So if you're hopefully you've already started your account, you would have gotten to the screen. The screen would look really, common. You would have looked at this already. One of the colleges we're going to talk about, so we have on here, someone did ask about University of Southern California. So we're going to go ahead and click there. The reason I'm going to bring this up is a lot of colleges, the way you'll see here on the left-hand side, this little column, you see where it says application and it says questions. And then down here, it says writing supplement and questions. Now, some colleges like to be a little bit sneaky about it, and they will not have this section here, but you actually will find the supplemental essays under questions. So I might find another example of that, but that just so you know, you might go into one of these and say, oh, great. Whoa, here's University of San Diego, no supplements. But then if you click questions, you might find at the bottom, ta-da, writing and other information. So they actually do have a supplemental question, but it's just not listed for them as a supplement. Okay, so I do want to make sure as you're going through your colleges, going through how many essays you need to write, make sure you do click through all of your colleges, click through questions, and make sure there isn't this extra question here, which is really another essay, right? It's a supplemental additional essay. Anything to add there, Kate?
Yeah, one of the ways that I try to keep track of all of those, by the way, is I just do sort of like a data collection, right? So I add all the schools, go through the Common App, and start creating. I like charts. I'm a big fan of a chart. I'm very visual, and I create a single document that has all the questions listed by school so that I can then compare where I can double up my answers so that I'm not writing more than I need to. Supplementals can be daunting because of that. And so you want to find similarities and places where you can use an idea multiple times, either by expanding a thought or by editing a thought down based on word limit. And that really helps keep track of ideas so that you're not individually attacking them, kind of look at them collectively and all together so that you can narrow down your focus, and it'll make it easier for you to sort of get through them and manage them.
Right. So for example, I had this up from just to have a visual here. So let's say you were applying to these three. I kind of picked these ones out of a hat. So we have USC here, we have Wisconsin, Madison, and we have Brown. So if you have more, I would literally start a Google Doc and at least start plugging them all in, just so you know, look, oh my gosh, it looks like I've got 12 essays I have to write, or I have 4 or something like that. But what Kate's talking is about is you might decide, interesting, this is about, why Wisconsin and what major. And then you might find that if you write something about your major, you're going to write about your interest in business, you might actually end up reusing parts of that for this one USC prompt as well, right? So again, we're trying to be efficient. You don't need to write 12 essays. You might get away with just writing 8 that you'd be able to tweak and reuse. So, for example, also same thing, let's say you're writing the brown one. It's like, write about something that brings you joy, right? And so let's say you decide, we'll talk about this later, but let's say you decide you want to write about rugby and, coaching a youth team, for example. Now, maybe it is something that happened on that team where you were exposed to a new idea or belief, right? So it could be used in both places. So I think it's definitely one of the first steps is to come up with a chart, come up with some sort of a document, something to put everything on there. Okay. All right. I think we should actually hop into, because we have someone on who has some questions about certain colleges. Maybe we'll start there. Let's see. Let me pull up. I think obviously maybe we'll start with the most. One second. Let's pull up Princeton. Give me a second. Okay, we're going to add that. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So we're back to my common application. Here's Princeton, right? So you can see here, they've got the questions, and what those questions are is, if you've been through this before, they're specific questions that are only going to this specific school, but about things like, when do you plan to start your term? What is your intended major? Things like that. Okay, but what we're going to talk about is the writing supplement. Okay, this is good. So this is the first one. Briefly elaborate an activity, organization, work experience, or hobby that's been particularly meaningful to you. Respond in 150 words, which is tight. Kate, what do you think? If you want to start us off, how would you approach this one?
Maybe okay, so I think one of the first things to consider is that in any supplemental question, it's a real opportunity, right? It probably feels like another thing you have to do. And if you can reframe it as maybe being an opportunity to showcase something about yourself that is separate and different and unique, that would not be found on any other part of your application, right? So this talks about an activity, organization, work experience, or hobby that's been particularly meaningful to you. You're going to also have an activities list on the common application. And this could be an opportunity to really expand on one of those experiences in a really meaningful way. Sometimes you might want to share an experience related to that has really developed your sense of self, or you've really learned something about yourself, and it allows you that opportunity to do it. For example, like my daughter's first job was when she was 11, and she got to be an umpire at softball. So we obviously listed that on as one of her activities. We listed all the years, the accomplishments, the things, the camps she got to attend. But in one of her supplemental questions, we were actually in this very thing and talk about how at the age of 11 and 12, she had to learn very quickly how to interact with adults. And so it developed that maturity and that engagement for her. And there was no other place on the application to expand on that idea. And this was a real opportunity. And it's a brief story, right? 150 words sounds like it's a lot. It is shockingly short once you start to write and you figure out that every word counts. And to piggyback off that idea, when we say every word counts, I really encourage you to put multiple eyes on these supplements and have lots of editing sessions, because the first draft will come out probably pretty easy. And then you're going to end up looking at the word count and you're going to find you have 350 words. That's kind of like the go-to. You'll have a paragraph or two and it will easily be 350 words. You're going to have to shave it down. And you're going to want to make sure that every single word, I call it page space. If it doesn't add value to the page space, then you need to make sure that you remove it, because you only have 150 words to convey both what the activity, organization, or work experience is. Also, in addition, how it's particularly meaningful to you and how it's added value to who you are and your experiences in your life. So you want to be able to connect all those pieces in a very short amount of time. You can recruit us to help you in that space. Also, parents are a good help, and English teachers are a good help as well. So, Karen.
So yeah, so something, and if you're willing, the person that is, I don't know if this is a student or a parent, but if you're, willing to type in here, which of the activities, organization, work experience, or hobby are you thinking about writing? You want to go ahead and put it in the chat box, and we can actually talk through it a little bit. Something that I really advise students to do is, let's say you decide you want to talk about your rugby team, because obviously we're all rugby players here. Let's just say you want to talk about rugby. The first thing I would think about is, let's think about the thousands of other students that play rugby. What are typical things other rugby players will talk about, right? So if you can already say, okay, probably other rugby players on my own team, on other teams are going to talk about is, being on my team really taught me a lot about discipline, because we had to, be at practice really early in the morning. We had to train a lot. I learned a lot about teamwork because we had to work together, because we, had to travel a lot. I learned a lot about, like essentially hard work and discipline, right? Like any single sport, that's going to be a typical essay about elaborating a sport, right? So if you were to pick that, I would want you to try to jot down everything you think is like a typical essay and throw that out the window. I don't want you to write something that every other kid who plays rugby or soccer or whatever is going to say. Typically, if you write about sports, most students are going to write about like teamwork and camaraderie and friendships, right? Like it happens. So then what we're going to want to look at is think a little bit deeper, right? So let's say we're going to talk about rugby, because I think there is a bit of there's a lot of advice about try not to write about your sport, especially if you're an athlete. Now, I kind of follow that, meaning don't write about your sport in the typical way. My team was down by 5 points and they gave me the ball and I scored and it was the best moment of my life. That shows me nothing, right? I don't learn anything else from you. We're talking about Princeton now, right? So they need to learn something new about you they can't gain from anything else. So what you might end up writing about is, okay, we'll talk about, if I were to write about this, I might then say, I've been playing rugby for the last 4 years. One of my favorite parts about rugby is the fact that in every other sport, I was told I was less than. I was too short to play volleyball, right? I was not fast enough to run cross country or track. I wasn't all these things. And here comes rugby that showed me that I was perfect the way I was. Rugby is a sport that encompasses all different body types, different athletic skills, and that's what makes this game beautiful. I don't know, I made that up, right? But that gives me a little bit more of a deeper understanding, or hopefully would give the reader a deeper understanding about why I love to play rugby. I'm going to assume I play because I love the teamwork, because I like my friends, because I like that stuff, right? But what I'm trying to share more about is this is what rugby does for me, right? It does something for my, maybe my self-image, for my, kind of respecting like who I am and loving myself and things like that. Okay, so regardless of what it is, so it literally is like less about, I don't care what you choose. It can be rugby, it can be your community service, it can be blank, blank, blank. As long as you see in that line, meaningful. It must be meaningful to you. So think about, why is that community service meaningful to you? It has to come from your heart. I need to be able to read it and go, oh, that's why this person spends so much time volunteering at their local animal shelter. This is why they do X. Okay, so I don't know if that helps. I want to cover a few other topics as well. Kate, do you want to say anything more about that?
I think that covers it. I think it's really critical to take the non-traditional angle. I think that that's a really important perspective and takeaway, that if you remember nothing from the next 30 minutes, that would be like one of those key pieces, right? Also keep in mind that your story, and I hear this a lot, students come to me and they say, well, I don't necessarily have a tragic story, so I don't know, right? Like, I haven't faced something that's awful and terrible, so I don't know how to present myself in that light. And not every story needs to be some awful, tragic, overcoming story. So who you are is developed in these nuanced, right? These small moments of your life. Be willing to talk about the small moments in a big way, and that will translate into something meaningful on the paper.
Yeah, perfect. I want to dive into a very, very common supplement, and I'm just putting in the chat box for now. This is an example, and most colleges are going to have some version of this, and it is the why us, right? So this one I just put in the chat box for everyone to look at, so we're all looking at the same one. Tell us why you decided to apply to the University of Wisconsin, Wisconsin-Madison. I just changed my accent there. Include why you're interested in studying the majors. If you're undecided, describe your area of possible academic interest. Now, this one's a little bit tricky because there's actually two parts to it. So we'll talk about the first part, right, which is why. How do you want to start us off? How would we start a why blank university? Or tell us why this essay is important, because some rattle it off. They're like, no problem, I love this school. And they're like, no big deal. It is a big deal. This is probably the most important supplemental essay in my opinion. So what do you think, Kate?
So I always approach this, that specificity is really important. That part of what you need to demonstrate is that you did not pick this school out of a hat, that this is not, right, like, oh, my dad told me about this cool place, so like I saw it and it was just awesome, and my favorite color is red and black, so I really want to be a Badger, so that's why I want to go there. Okay, what they're asking you is, have you done your due diligence, and do you have concrete reasons why you want to attend Madison? Okay, so the first thing I always, and I'm actually working on this very specific school because one of my people, he really wants to go to Madison. That's his #1 choice.
Which I love. I love this school. I love this.
Oh my God, one of my favorite Big Ten schools of all time. I'm actually going to be an hour away next week, and I can't wait. So probably one of my favorite schools of all time. And I can say that very generally, because I did not go there. I can be like, well, I love the culture of the town. I love that it's a big city. But if you want to be a student at the university, you need to dial it into programs, opportunities, organizations, classes, majors, professors, landmarks that all are going to create the experience you want to have. And when you add that all up together, you present it as the picture of your college experience. So it's important to do things like look up their majors, what classes are required to achieve those majors, what's the pathway to that. If you want to do business, what kind of business? International business? Do you want political science? Do you want international relations? Do you want government? How do you intend to use that major? How are you going to take what Madison is going to give you and then translate that into the world? And you need to start naming things, not just like, well, I heard they have a strong business program, so I'm going to go there. No, are there professors that you have looked up and researched and want to study from them specifically because they have a specialty? What dorm do you want to live in and why? Is it close to other landmarks on campus that you want to be a part of? What organizations are you going to join? What intramural sports do you want to play? Are you going to play rugby? Have you reached out to the president of that club? Have you talked to people on campus? Did you meet anyone at a webinar that you say gave you great personal insights as to why Madison is the right place for you? So in terms of the why Madison, it can't be a feeling, right? It can't be just because you really like it, although that's probably the very intangible thing that makes you want to go there. I know that I went to Iowa, and part of the reason was because I showed up on that campus and I said, this is it, right? There is a culture and a feeling and a connection that is very, it's that it factor that's very hard to describe. But in this essay, we want concrete reasons, and specificity is your friend in that regard. So you want to make sure that you create a master list of all the elements that you want to include. Running trails that you plan on using on the weekends, places you want to visit, cultural, what do they have culturally within the town that speaks to you, that you want to visit? Are there museums? Are there landmarks that you can go to? I would research the diversity of the campus. What about the student body is drawing you in? How do you know that these are your people? And so it's going to take, because I agree with Karen, this is probably the most important supplemental essay out there. And Madison gives you 650 words to do it, not all colleges do. So I'll give you like 350, and you have to develop a way to say all of. Do your research, I think, is the very first thing I would tell you, and take diligent notes. Also, this will help you really know if this is the place for you, to be very honest. You might think it is, and then you figure out that they don't offer or have access to all the things you want. So research is your friend in this case for the supplemental. Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. So a couple things I was going to mention too is, let's say we're doing this one for Madison, right? Or I went in and looked up. So this is Duke's as well. So similar, right? Share with us why you consider Duke a good match for you. Is there something in particular about Duke's academic or other offerings that attract you? So one of the things as you're going through, so let's say you're like, got it, I got from Kate, I'm going to write down all these specific things. I'm going to write about all this stuff. If after you read it, you realize, actually, this could apply to a couple other schools, it's not the right one, right? It should really just be about Duke. This one for Duke should not ever be confused with the one for Wisconsin, right? It can have some elements that are similar, but they should really feel like its own vibe. It's the same as like if I were describing Kate to someone, they should be able to say, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about Kate, not, wait, are you talking about that other woman that plays rugby in Sacramento? Wait, like if I'm being really too broad, it doesn't help, it doesn't help your cause, right? You need to be really, really specific. So let's say we're talking about Duke because we have someone on here who is interested. So I'm going to show you something that you might want to take a look at. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Duke website. So this is probably where you might start. If you start writing about how you want to be a Blue Devil and you want to go watch basketball, take it out. Every single person out there is going to say that because that's maybe the thing that brought you in, like Kate said, but it's not the reason you want to attend. So you might kind of start looking around at like, oh, what are the things that are happening at Duke? So they've got an energy initiative. Like, oh, what's that? What's some research that's going on here, right? Oh, there's an energy data analytics lab. Like maybe I'm really into that. You might want to look around to that. I might want to look at my major, right? Which is what Kate was mentioning. You can't just say, I want to study business. We really want to look at what does that mean, right? What does it mean to study business at Duke? How is that different from studying business at USC, right? What are the connections or what are the things you get from this school that you wouldn't get if you went to USC, right? So you're trying to convince this school, if they accept you, you're probably going to go. So if we go through here, sorry, this website is a little tougher to find the actual major. This is not helping me, sorry. Hang on, that's fine. Trinity. let's look at what this is, because I don't know. Let's look at what the focus program is. So this is all first semester Duke students are exposed to ideas from vantage points of different disciplines. There are 16 interdisciplinary clusters. Now, it's been a while since I've had someone apply to Duke. This is good for me to know, right? If I have someone applying to Duke, I might want you to think about and bring up in an essay, is there a cluster you're interested in? I can't wait my first semester to really learn about, to take this cluster on envisioning human rights. I really believe in social justice. It's a big part of the reason I'm going to Duke. I want to make a change when I'm older or whatever. I want to affect change. I'm excited to take this class in cultural anthropology and also in documentary studies. Like, that would be really special to me. I don't know. But what we're trying to get at is you do need to do your research, right? It's the same as like if you were applying for a job, you don't just say, it'd be cool to work here. It's near the beach. It's like, do you even know what we do here, right? This is a technology company and you're trying to apply for a, I don't know, public relations job, or something. It's like, you wouldn't just say, I want this job because it's near a city, which is what a lot of students say. It's about location. Like, oh, I love the hustle and bustle of the city. You could go to a lot of colleges in a hustle and bustle of a city. So we need to be specific about, I want to be in the city because if I go to NYU in the summers, I want to intern at local off-Broadway shows, because what I really want to do is learn about lighting and stage direction. Really specific, right? Like, if that's what you want to do, of course you would probably look at a school at NYU, not UC Davis, where I went, right? There's no Broadway there, so it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so the why us essay is very important. And again, to be really specific and to get away from the big broad reasons why you maybe originally looked at it or why others are probably going to put in their essays as well. I do want to make sure we touch on the second part of the essay that was for Wisconsin. That is also a very typical essay for most colleges, which is include why you're interested in studying the majors you've selected. And then if you're undecided, describe the areas of possible academic interests. So again, I'll have Kate start us off a little bit. So if you get that question about, tell us why you're interested in studying engineering, business, philosophy or something, how do you go about answering that?
I would really start. So that's a payback off of the programs that are specifically offered at that school. Them had to your career. I get a lot of kids who are like, well, I'm undecided, right? Like, I'm not really sure exactly what I want to do. What they're asking for you to do, right, in that space, in my opinion, is they need you to have an idea of where you want to go. Most people know whether or not they want to study humanities, or if they want to go social science or the hard sciences, or if engineering is off their plate, or if architecture is the love of their life, or if medicine is a possibility. Okay, so you're undecided. What you're going to do is narrow the focus down to the areas of interest that are of most importance to you and tie it to your values, and then tie it to what you want to do with that education. When I went to school, I didn't know that I was going to be a teacher, but I knew that I enjoyed writing. I knew that I enjoyed helping people. I knew that I was really good with people. So I expanded on that idea of what areas of interest. Also, use what you enjoy to focus your research in terms of those majors. So if you're looking at Duke or you're looking at Princeton, that's why it's so important to do your research ahead of time, because what you might search on the websites, and a lot of times what they do on those on their college websites is say, like, this major will mean you study all these things, and then in turn, these are the job opportunities that are available to you and what you can do with that degree. And that will help you narrow down that focus in terms of being undecided. But it always should be an exploration of not just, now we have a combination of specificity of programs and ideas and what you want to study, but also how it connects to you and your values and your sense of self and identity, and how you are bridging their curriculum to who you want to be as a person. So you're giving them additional insights as to who you are and what's most important to you, which allows them to know how you are a good match with them as well. So it's kind of it's a dual question in terms of like offering them all the reasons and the things that you want to study, and you know why you want to be at Madison, or you know why you want to be at any particular school. And in turn, it also becomes that space where you can be vulnerable and discuss and connect those outside stories of yourself to why you might want to go into helping people. Maybe you have, you know, maybe you've had a difficult relationship with your parents, or maybe you had an illness that you've had to deal with, or maybe you've had a sibling that has had a sickness, or maybe you've had a trying experience or an outside experience that went, you know what, I went through this and I might not know exactly where I'm going, but I know I want to help people. I want to build homes. I want to get into education and change the system, right? Like connect it to those pieces of you that are meaningful so that they know what they're selecting as well.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I mean, I think literally, if you walk away from anything, the biggest thing you want to do in any of these supplements is we want to be specific, right? So if you want to, go pre-med, the general thing most students are going to say is, I want to be a doctor because I want to help people. And you're like, okay, but you could help someone in a lot of different ways, right? You could be a counselor, you could be a teacher, you could be whatever, right? So you need to be specific about, I want to go to medicine because something that really interests me is one time in my last AP bio class, we started learning about genetics. And I think it's going to be so wonderful to think about a time where we could maybe fix problems before they start with gene therapy. And I want to really get into research with blank, 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 right? Already that shows that you've taken a class that's like somewhat related. So you kind of know what you're getting into. And it's not this big, broad, I watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy and I want to be a doctor. It's like you're in the real, you understand what it really means to be pre-med, which is you're going to take a lot of science and you better love it. You're going to take a lot of math and you should enjoy it, right? So I'm the first one to tell you, I went to UC Davis with the plan to be a vet. And I had no clue that being pre-vet at Davis is super hard. It is essentially going to, medical pre-med, right? You're in with all the pre-med students, and I'm in super high level chemistry and biology, and I love the animal science, but I hated the other science classes. And really, it was a struggle for me. It was really, really hard for me. So had I known that ahead of time, I might have thought a little bit more about, do I really want to be pre-vet, or do I want to do something else? So I think what they're trying to get at with these questions is, do you know what you're getting into when you say you want to be pre-med? And then I'm looking back at your transcript and I see you've been getting C's in bio. Does that seem like a good match? That's one of the question marks they're going to have too, is how much of a risk are you applying for this major where you're not actually really even going to succeed, right? So you do want to think about that a little bit as well. I want to touch on one other one, and then I want to make sure that if you have any questions for our attendees, please make sure to go ahead and put it in the chat box or the question and answer so we can help you with that. There is another common one. See if I can find it. It's essentially that a lot of students I have might struggle with, and it's essentially the one, oh here, this one. This is actually a USC one, but there's a similar one at Boulder. There's a similar one at many schools. I put it in the chat box. It's essentially like a diversity essay. So the USC one says, USC believes one learns best when interacting with people of different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. Tell us about a time you're exposed to a new idea, when your beliefs were challenged by another point of view. This comes up a lot, and I have a lot of students, similar to what Kate was saying earlier, where they'll say like, honestly, like I'm not very diverse. I'm like a I'm pretty lucky. Like I'm a Caucasian female living in a pretty nice area outside of Denver. I really haven't experienced a whole lot of tough stuff, and I really don't know what to say, right? And that's where you don't necessarily need to come from, like a really difficult childhood, or you don't have to have some like mind-blowing thing. It can be very small, but a moment where, and this actually, I want to say maybe this is even a Dartmouth essay, but challenge does not mean it has to be negative, right? It doesn't mean like you came across someone who was like super racist and you're like, oh my God, how do I react to someone that has a really, new perspective like that? And how do I, have a big action? It can simply be another point of view, just some moment where you're like, oh, I never thought about that. So I'm going to give you one example. This is one I've been giving a lot of my students. As you may have seen in the last newsletter, we decided to homeschool my daughter. So she's in first grade. It has been a learning experience for me. It has certainly challenged my beliefs about education. I am very traditional. I like school. I like classes. I like grades. Like I'm that person, right? So it's interesting talking with other homeschool families, people that do this a lot. It's a different way of looking at what education is, right? So like there are no tests. There is no specific deadline that I need her to read by. We want her to read, but is her day filled with like worksheets and stuff? No, we're gonna read books. We went to the grocery store and I was like reading her things, just like stuff on the shelves, right? So you're trying to like think of homeschooling as there is always school happening no matter what. It doesn't have to be within the confines of the school. So if I were to write this essay, right, and yes, I'm obviously not applying to college, but I could write about that. It's a time where I've been exposed to a new idea about what school really is. What is education? What is the goal? And that's a better, that's a different way of looking at, well, one time someone, said this about me, and I make it really personal about just like one small interaction. So if you don't really have like a different background, you can think about, did you ever travel somewhere and you were a teammate with someone from another country? Were you, I had a student who went to their friend's like bat mitzvah, and they didn't know anything about the Jewish religion, and they learned a lot about that and what that was about. And that was really great for them to kind of think about religions and what are some commonalities or what are some things that are similar. So I have a question here. So is the point of that essay to just see how you process things, or is there a point you're trying to get across? Point of that essay. And I think what you're saying is this essay, right? This kind of like interacting with people. Okay. Working with people in different backgrounds. I can answer that. Or Kate, what do you think?
No, go for it. And then I'll follow up.
Okay. So the point of this essay, two different things. Number one, the amazing thing about college is you're going to have a ton of people from everywhere, tons of different backgrounds. That's the point, right? They want to get people that are conservative, people that are liberal, people that are Christians, that are Buddhists, that are, that are musicians, that are athletes, and you want to throw them all together, right? That's kind of like the goal of college, right? Is like to get all these different points of view, put them in classes together, put them in dorms together, and that's how you learn, right? You learn, yes, in the classes, but also kind of the outside of class stuff, right? Is having those conversations with your roommates or having conversations in the dining commons and things like that, right? So what colleges want to know is, what is your viewpoint, but also, are you okay having your viewpoint challenged, or are you just going to be like, nope, this is how I am, and that's it, my way or the highway, I'm not going to change, I don't want to listen to anyone else, because obviously that doesn't make for a very good college community, right? So they do want to, kind of show that you're able to be flexible and change and grow, but also that you share a little bit about, these are some things that I believe, these are some things that challenge what I thought. It doesn't mean I hate traditional school now, but I've learned to value both things differently, right? So that's kind of the point. I still get to share a little bit about myself, right? Like you just all learned, I kind of love school. Like I'm that person that like sharpens their pencil. I'm like super excited. Like I like school, right? That's who I am. And you learn that about me. But in this essay, if I were to write about it, about homeschooling, it challenged me a little bit, made me think about it. It doesn't mean I've completely changed my mind and I'm like, that's it, we're homeschooling for the rest of my life. But it's just kind of talking about what that process is. So I don't know if that answers your question, or Kate, I don't know if you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo your idea that like one, it gives them a chance to learn something about you and sort of like your baseline beliefs, but it also, and yes, it allows them to learn sort of like how you approach a situation in which you are challenged or you are put in a position where you have to disagree and you have to figure out and navigate that space. But it also, because part of that essay is like you explaining whether or not you actually changed your mind, or if you didn't change your mind, or how you process that information. And so there's a result to that conversation, right? Like there's an actual ending, like how did you navigate that space? How did you interact with someone? Were they shut down? Did you invite them in to have a dialogue about whatever that issue was? Did you abandon a belief because you had like an awakening, or were you able to assess the complexity of an issue and then form a new idea? So it's also about learning about how you learn. They're seeing how you react to and take in new information and how you ultimately approached, because essentially, right, that problem, it's problem solving and it's learning and it's growth is what that question is sort of pinpointing.
Right. And I just put in the chat box, because we have someone looking at Princeton, like here's Princeton's version of this same question. We value diverse perspectives, right? So it's the same. So let's say you were applying to both of these schools. You got USC and Princeton. Whatever you write for one of them, you will most likely be able to reuse, right? So we go back to the very first thing we talked about. If you can kind of organize yourself, that's, instead of 2 essays, you're really writing one that would hopefully speak to both of those. Let's see, I wanted to pull up, it's so funny. They have these short, really short questions. So I'm looking at Princeton, right? They have these types of questions like this, which I'll put in the chat box. What song represents the soundtrack of your life at this moment? Stanford has ones that are like this as well, that are even shorter than this. So this is 50 words for that one. And actually those short ones are really, really hard in my opinion, because it's like, how do you boil it down to 5 words? But here's another one. This is 50 words for Stanford. What is the most significant challenge that society faces today? So a couple of things that I want to touch on. The Stanford one, I'll approach that one first. What is the most significant challenge society faces today? Be specific. There's probably a gazillion things you could write about, but you don't want to just say climate change. You're like, cool. What do you mean by that? Tell me about that, right? Like, I need something, the most specific thing is fossil fuels, or the fracking, or it's related to climate change, but can you dig a level deeper? Can we get more specific about one thing within that, right? If you said racism, I'd be like, yeah, of course racism is a huge challenge. Can we get deeper into what that actually means, right? Is it like education? Is it about talking about history in schools? Is it, I don't know, like you want to get a little bit deeper instead of just these big broad strokes like healthcare, right? I've had students that are like, access to healthcare is the most significant challenge. Absolutely. What's one more level down we could get, right? That it's like, okay, access to healthcare in certain areas, in rural areas, and how do we get deeper into that? How do you get doctors to want to practice in rural areas? Maybe that's a challenge, because without that, you have less access to healthcare, you have blah, 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 right? So you want to start one place, try to dig down a little bit deeper. I also want you to think about, you know, they have another question, and you're going to see in a lot of your colleges, they're going to have some questions that are like this. What historical moment or event do you wish you could have witnessed? No matter what, this is another, if you take away one thing, although I'm making you guys take away a ton of stuff. This is going to a college admissions person or team, right? It's going to a college. So what they're trying to get at is, how do you think? How does your brain work? I had a student that was like, you know what event I really want to see? I wanted to see Game 6, Bulls, 1986 or whatever, like the big game they had. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I would have wanted to see that too. Is that really a historical moment Stanford wants to read right now? I mean, he could have gone that way, right? And I could make a case that that's actually, you know, you could write about that. Or is it more, you actually find something that is specific to you, right? Like I would have wanted to either participate or maybe to like be there when the first woman voted, right? Or when the first interracial couple got married. I think that's pretty amazing. A, because I can't believe that like was against the law, but also like to see that happen, right? So whatever you pick here is a reflection of you, but it's still a reflection of a college application, right? It still can't just be something like, I would have watched the like finale of Survivor, you know, it's like, you know, I don't know, maybe that would be exciting, but we're still talking about the historical stuff. Kate, do you want to jump in anything? And I'm gonna start wrapping it up.
Yeah,
I know we've been talking at you guys for a long time.
Actually, I have I have a really good example.
Yeah. Oh, we might have lost you. Oh, there we go.
Are we okay? Do you
Yep.
see me?
Yep, I can hear you and see you.
Can you see?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Do you see my screen?
I do.
Okay, so these are Colgate's supplemental questions, and they're just, right, they're fill in the blank, and it's the bolded is what they gave her, and then it was 75 characters or less. And the objective is so we can learn more about you. And these were actually the answers that we settled on and that she submitted. So it's, I am fascinated by the way laughter spreads through groups like the most wonderful wildfire.
Oh,
I want to learn all I can about psychology. It's the closest I get to climbing into the skin of others. My favorite book is Know My Name, Chanel Miller. It impels my sexual assault prevention work. My role model is Hector, my school custodian. We talk for hours about his pets. I love it. In the future, I hope to support gender violence survivors internationally with empathy as a guide. One thing I would change is my clumsy falls at volleyball practice, although everyone else loves them. I wish women could tell their own stories. Males write 75.8% of history books. And I am most challenged by creating content to keep 341 followers engaged in my Bachelor fan account. So
I love this person.
This, I know, this runs the gamut, right? So the first thing we notice is just the writing style, right? She engages and uses like dashes to actually split her ideas and thoughts in order to gain the most out of those 75 characters or less. So you can play with the sentence structure a little bit in this space rather than trying to make it in a very grammatically or formal essay-like academic response. You can, in these moments, step out of that space and show through your writing your personality and who you are. It's very descriptive in terms of its language use, right? When it's talking about laughter spreading through groups like wildfire, that's a simile, and it's a really great way to compare, right, ideas and also create imagery in the reader. So use those figurative language pieces to support your writing. She clearly shows something that she's willing or wanting to study, and that will probably be something that she pursues in college. It is, by the way. and then reflects, right? The next part of the sentence is a reflection about why she values that topic. It allows her to see other people for who they are, right? Climbing into the skin of others. Sort of very reminiscent of To Kill a Mockingbird. My favorite book is Know My Name. Also, just on a really small note, notice that she did italicize it, which shows that she understands those academic conventions, and then leads in with the author, and then connects her book to the pursuit that she is actually going to be pursuing and supporting, and organizations that she's going to be involved with at college. She made her role model somebody that would seem outside of her standard circle, right? It's not my mom, it's not my dad, it's not my grandparent, and it's not some random person that I don't know. It's not a fictional character, it's not imaginary, and it's very concrete and real to her. And that really did happen. She did talk to Hector a lot about her animals, but also notice that now we learn something new. We learn about what she wants to learn about. We learn about the fact that she loves to laugh. And now we're learning about the fact that she loves animals as well. So she's taking opportunity to both connect her future, her want of being at the school, and also give interesting tidbits of information that there is no other space to just be like, yeah, I like animals. I like dogs. I like to hang out and pet my cat all the time, right? Like nobody would know that I'm obsessed with my cat. This is a true story, by the way, unless I specifically found a way to let you know.
Yeah.
So in the future, right? So now she's connecting these ideas to the future goals and the other group of people that she wants to support. And then she's also using, right, with empathy as a guide becomes her way of sharing another virtue and value of her. And it's a description of who she is in connection to wanting to be able to support gender violence survivors.
Yep.
Something that she would change. Now she flips the script. Right? So far, all of her answers have been really serious, maybe other than the pets, but really they've had a very intentional purpose. Here she allows this one to be humorous and show the lighter side and show that like, I played volleyball. Yeah, I think it is really important to show the other side of yourself, right? That it's not all academic for her, that she played volleyball, but wasn't the best. And she fell all the time and she is maybe clumsy. And that also gives you this visual of her literally falling down, right? And then, but also like everyone still loved her for it. So it's really okay to fail, right? So there's this depth of information that you get from each sentence. We also see that she has a sense of humor about herself. She can laugh at herself. And that's a quality that anyone would appreciate. And it's nice to see a balance in the responses of, I love laughter. I want to know about the human condition. I want to support and help people in this very specific way. I talk to people that maybe others don't. I also love animals. And then I love where it's, I wish, right? So again, she touches on this sort of female-driven perspective. And then she also lays down some facts and is like, by the way, I know what I'm talking about because 75.8% of history books are written by men. So she's also demonstrating her depth of knowledge in relation to the topics that she's writing about. And then showing my most challenged by creating content to keep 341 followers engaged in my Bachelor fan account. Like that's very real, but also again, it becomes funny. And it becomes a way to share, like, right, that secret obsession that like, she secretly watches The Bachelor with her friends and has this account, and she literally has 341 people who follow it. And that would be a wild unknown had she not taken this opportunity to share that in this very silly way, right? But also this very meaningful way that lets the admissions counselor know another thing about her. Right. So you can see there's sort of a theme that she carries through and then also breaks that theme by trying to add in those obscure details that really make her feel like a whole person in a very short amount of space.
Right.
So I just wanted to share
Yeah,
that
no, that's great.
because I think that's a really good example of what those short, quick hits can look like.
No, that's great. We did have a question here, which I want to address. But the thing I think what you've touched on is find the moments where you can be light and show who you are. But if you feel like the question's kind of asking like something serious, you do want to find that deeper thing that you care about, right? When you say, what is the most significant challenge? If you're like, I don't have enough followers on my Instagram, it's like, was that the right place to say that, right? It could be something else, right? So you do want to be careful about when to be funny, and is an admissions person going to read it the right way? There is one last question here before we start wrapping up. Just should you use this kind of creative writing when explaining the details of that activity section, or do you just list off what you did? My personal opinion, that activity section is pretty short. I would use that more to the point. This is what I did, right? I have, I have a waitressing job or something, and these are my duties: is I serve customers, I, take care of bills, I run food, and I'm responsible for answering the phones. Like, I want to know what you're actually doing. It's, it's not something I would expect to see really creative writing in an explanation of activities.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, since we're down to the, kind of the last minute here, Kate, is there any last thought you want to leave everyone with as they head off into doing their supplemental essays?
I think my final thought would be to remember that you don't want to repeat something in a supplemental that they're going to get automatically from the application. Really think of it as your opportunity to give them the other parts of you that are meaningful and are well-rounded, and that they should know about you, and that those can be real selling points. Like, use the essays to market yourself and make them and force them to choose you because you paint yourself as the exact right choice. That's the opportunity you have with the essays. I know they can feel daunting, but it's actually the place where I think you can sell yourself the most, because it's off the app, right? The application is going to look kind of similar sort of all around for a lot of students. So what are the things that you can share off app, as I like to call it, that are the reasons that you will force them to pick you, put you in the yes pile? That's always our objective when we write.
Perfect. And my last thought is I want you to think about, even though applications are no longer paper form, right? They're online. Every single part of the application is like reading a book. It should be something new. Okay, so if your personal statement is about rugby, right? What I talked about, like about why I love rugby, and it kind of gave me the space to be myself and feel strong about my body and whatever, right? Let's say I wrote about that. If I get a supplemental essay that says what brings me joy, I'm not going to write about rugby again. I do want to write about my volunteering at the animal shelter, right? And then the next one, which is like, what is a significant problem? I don't want to write about animals because I just wrote about animals in the previous one, right? So every single essay should be like a new page. Like, oh, I kind of like when Kate was going through those each questions, I want to be like, oh, I didn't know she liked pets. Oh, I didn't know she liked The Bachelor. Oh, I didn't know that, right? Every single essay is an opportunity to show just another part of yourself. So if you're continuing to say, I learned this in rugby, and then, oh, I also learned this in volleyball, and then I learned this in soccer, it's like, I get it, you're an athlete. Like, you don't need to keep telling me that. I want something else. So that's the goal of a full application, is really to give an application reader as much about you as possible, right? So it's not only just to like fill in these bubbles and like write off these essays. It's really the only chance you get to tell them more about yourself that's not just your transcript, your classes, right? Test scores, things like that. So I definitely want to use what you can, use that page space like Kate said. If you need help, we are here to help you. Please feel free to reach out to us, Kate at ruggersedge.com or Karen at ruggersedge.com. We are starting to wrap up with some of our students that are early decisions. So if you have some regular decision applications, or even if you're like, we need a little bit of extra help, reach out to us so we can see if we can squeeze you in with our senior class and help you along the way. And Thanks so much to everyone who took the time this evening to join us, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Hi guys, thank you so much.